Okay, so get ready for a wild ride today because we're diving headfirst into some seriously thought-provoking interpretations of, well, religious history.
Yeah, we're talking about those big questions, divine favor, curses, maybe even a monkey or two.
You got that right. We're tackling a text called No Bounty to Monkeys and Pigs, and let me tell you, it really flips the script on some common ideas, especially about the children of Israel.
What's so fascinating is how this text takes the idea of God's favor, something we often see as unconditional in, traditional stories, and kind of turns it on its head.
Yeah, it really makes you think twice, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Even the title, No Bounty to Monkeys and Pigs, is pretty, well, bold, you could say.
It doesn't beat around the bush, that's for sure.
Not at all. It really sets the stage for a very different kind of conversation about, like you said, the children of Israel and their whole story. But before we get too far, I think it's important to point out that we're focusing on the specific interpretations in this particular text, which, and I think this is key, really emphasizes an Islamic perspective.
Yeah, and it pulls from both the Quran and the Bible to build its case, kind of weaving them together. One of the biggest things it dives into is this idea of a covenant between God and the children of Israel.
Okay, so like a two-way agreement.
Yeah, exactly. You see it mentioned in verses like Quran 2.47, where it talks about the children of Israel being favored above all others, or Quran 2.211, warning against those who turn away from God's signs.
So uphold your end of the bargain and it's all good, but break the rules and, well...
Let's just say there are consequences, maybe not so good ones.
Right, like those curses mentioned in Leviticus 26.
Exactly. But this text takes it a step further, claiming the children of Israel didn't just break the rules, they actually went and changed the scriptures, and that's where things get really intense.
Whoa, wait, changed their scriptures? Like literally rewrote the words?
That's what it's suggesting, and it uses pretty strong language, too.
Wow, that's a pretty bold claim.
It is, and it points to dietary laws as an example, citing Quran 3.93, the one about forbidden foods, saying it's evidence of this tampering.
And it connects that to those curses in Quran 5.78.
Exactly, like a direct link between messing with the scriptures and facing divine punishment.
So we're not just talking about breaking a few rules here. It's more like a fundamental betrayal, at least according to this text.
Exactly, a major breach of trust. And this is where the whole monkeys and pigs thing comes into play, which honestly was what really caught my eye with this text, that title. It just grabs you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, come on, no bounty to monkeys and pigs. How could you not want to know more? But how does it all connect?
Well, the text takes a verse from the Quran, 5.60, which talks about those who face God's anger being turned into, well, you guessed it, apes and pigs.
So not literally turning into animals, right? It's symbolic.
Yeah, more like metaphors. Now, it defines those terms, hizanaya, and very specifically.
Okay, so how so?
Ize, the monkey. It uses that to represent anyone who spills blood as, ordained by Allah, while in the EC of the pig symbolizes those who corrupt what Allah has given.
Ah, so these animals, they're not random, they're very intentional representations of those who've gone astray.
Exactly. And it ties this imagery to a story from the Quran, 80.116, about a prophet who basically rejects guidance, turns away from the truth.
And this prophet, the text implies it's Israel.
Heavily implied, yeah. And that turning away, that's what leads to the fall from grace, hence the monkeys and pigs.
So it's about more than just following the rules. It's about this idea of light and darkness, which the text seems to use a lot.
It's all over the place, right? Like in Quran 37.37, where it talks about a light from God.
Okay, so not literal light, but metaphorical.
Yeah, exactly. And the text is saying that those who stray from what it calls the religion of truth, they basically lose that divine light.
It's like stumbling around in the dark, both literally and, I guess, spiritually.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it.
So stray from the path,
Yeah.
and you end up lost in the dark, stripped of that guiding light. It's a pretty intense image, you've got to admit.
Intense but effective, right. And it gets even more interesting because it ties this whole light and darkness thing to a specific place, Bacca, Jerusalem.
Bacca, Jerusalem. I'm not as familiar with that name as, just Jerusalem. Is it the same place?
Yeah, it seems to be how this text is using it, connecting it to those verses like Quran 2.105, the one about blessedness around it, and 3.74 talking about clear signs and the station of Abraham.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So it's not just about following the rules. It's about, physically being close to this sacred place, this Bacca, Jerusalem, as this text calls it.
Exactly, it holds some kind of special spiritual significance, almost like a focal point for divine grace, if you will.
I'm starting to see the connection here, but wow, It really adds a whole other layer to the idea of pilgrimage, doesn't it? It becomes more than just a physical journey. It's like this quest for, well, you said it, divine grace, that inner light.
Yeah. Exactly. And it backs this up with verses like Quran 3.171, talking about God bestowing grace, and 17.70, where it mentions God choosing certain people for favor. It's all connected to this idea of being close to that centrality of light, both physically and spiritually.
It's like a spiritual GPS, almost. But this text, it doesn't sugarcoat things either, does it? I mean, we've got curses, punishments, even those animal transformations. It's intense.
No, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. And it links these consequences to specific events, like when the children of Israel were told to settle in a particular land, what the text identifies as present-day Jordan, but then they wanted to go back to, well, the Blessed Land, or Palestine, as described in Quran 7.161-162.
And that desire, that longing, that was another form of disobedience, which then led to, well, more bad stuff.
That's how this text sees it, yeah. It plays into that whole theme of, action and consequence, transgression and punishment. But, and this is important, it's not like a black and white, you're doomed kind of thing. There's still this element of, well, righteousness, even within this narrative of straying.
Really, where do we see that? Because so far, it seems pretty clear-cut. Disobey and face the music.
Well, remember those verses about the apes and pigs, Quran 5.60. The text uses those same verses to highlight the difference between those who mess up and those who forbade evil, as it says in Quran 7.164-166.
Oh, interesting. So even amidst this widespread disobedience, there's that acknowledgement that people can still choose to do the right thing to push back against the, I guess you could say, the bad guys.
Exactly. And that's where, amidst these warnings and condemnations, we also get a glimpse of something else: mercy. Quran 7.167-169 talks about how swift Allah's punishment can be, but it also emphasizes forgiveness for those who repent, those who turn back.
It's like that glimmer of hope, that reminder that even within this framework of, divine justice, there's still room for redemption, for finding your way back to that path, that centrality of light we talked about.
You've got it. That's the key takeaway here. It's not just about punishment. It's about returning to that path of righteousness, that connection with the divine.
And that takes effort, doesn't it? It's not passive. It's a conscious choice.
Absolutely. The text seems to argue that it's not enough to just inherit your beliefs, to just go with the flow. You have to actively engage with your faith, grapple with it, and ultimately find your own way back to that source.
It's like they say, the unexamined life is not worth living. This text is saying the same applies to face question, explore, and strive for that deeper understanding. It's not something you just inherit. It's an active pursuit.
Exactly. And that active engagement, that personal journey, it comes through in how this text interprets other figures too. Like, think about Gog and Magog, for instance.
Oh man, Gog and Magog. Those names always send shivers down my spine. They don't exactly scream good vibes, do they? What's the text's take on those two?
Well, they pop up all over the place, right? Apocalyptic stories, ancient texts, usually not a good sign.
Yeah, harbingers of chaos, bringers of destruction, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And this text ties them right back to that idea of straying from the right path. They're like the ultimate symbol of those who've totally abandoned the true faith, completely embraced wickedness, the whole 9 yards.
The poster children for spiritual darkness?
You could say that, yeah. If those monkeys and pigs, at least how this text sees them, represent like taking a wrong turn, Gog and Magog are like driving off a cliff, no turning back.
Okay, that's a pretty vivid image. But it's interesting, it's like this text is creating this whole system, like a spiritual map, showing all the different ways people can move away from that centrality of light.
It's pretty intricate, isn't it? But you're right, it's not just about labeling everyone, right? It's not like, you're good, you're bad, end of story.
Exactly. So what's the point then? What's the text trying to do with all of this?
It's a call to action, a reminder that even if you've strayed, even if you see yourself in some of these, let's say, less than flattering descriptions, there's still a way back. Remember all that talk about Allah's mercy. That's key here.
Right, that possibility of forgiveness and redemption.
Exactly. It's about recognizing where you've gone wrong, asking for forgiveness, and making that conscious choice to get back on track, back to that path of righteousness.
It's a message of hope, isn't it? A reminder that even when things seem dark, even when we feel lost, there's always a chance to find our way back to that light.
It's about that inner transformation, that rekindling of that divine spark. And it's something we all have the potential for, regardless of how far we might feel like we've strayed.
You know, this whole deep dive has been pretty intense. Really makes you think twice about, well, everything, really. The stories we tell about religious history, about good and evil, even about ourselves.
That's the power of texts like this, right? They push us, challenge us to look beyond the surface, to really engage with these ideas in a meaningful way. And honestly, that's what this whole text seems to be calling for, a more active, engaged, personal relationship with faith.
Yeah, it's about questioning those inherited interpretations, digging deeper, and ultimately, finding your own truth.
Exactly. And in a world that's overflowing with information, with everyone claiming to have the answers, that journey, that process of questioning and seeking, it's more important than ever.
Absolutely. It's about owning your beliefs, your values, really understanding why you believe what you believe, not just accepting things at face value.
Well said. It's about embracing that journey of discovery, even when it leads to those uncomfortable, challenging places that make us question everything.
And this deep dive, this no bounty to monkeys and pigs, it's definitely taken us to some unexpected places. But you know what? I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. It sparked a conversation, pushed us outside our comfort zones, and honestly, left us with a lot more to chew on.
And isn't that the mark of a truly great text? It doesn't just give you answers, it makes you ask better questions.
It's safe to say this deep dive has given us a whole lot more to think about, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling it too.
Oh, I'm sure of it. But they're good questions, the kind that keep us engaged, keep us seeking, keep us trying to understand ourselves and the world just a little bit better.
And that's what it's all about, right? Never stop questioning, never stop exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All our listeners out there, keep diving deep.